Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Babs. I'm super excited to share with you this clip of an interview that I had with two really amazing humans, Gina and Erin. They will talk to you about intuitive eating and how you can really help yourself. So I hope you enjoy this, and please comment below and read the description below to learn more about Gina and Erin. They're really wonderful humans and are doing great work. And I bet you'll be able to feel how much love and passion and energy they have for their work and how they really are out there to help people. So enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Babs and I am an occupational therapist, lymphedema therapist, and a yoga instructor, and I host online adaptive yoga programs, and I am happy to introduce you to two of my new friends that are going to help us better understand intuitive eating and how we can heal ourselves through mindfulness and through nutrition. So I'd love for both of you just to share a little bit about yourselves and kind of what we'll be talking about. So Erin, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my name is Erin Byrne. I am a licensed social worker. I work out of a private practice in Andover, Massachusetts called Mindful Body Therapy and Wellness. And I mostly work with teens and young adults on body image issues. I do a lot with disordered eating and eating disorders. And I really just focus on trying to help them heal their relationship, their emotional relationship with their body and food.
Awesome. And Gina?
Hi, I'm Gina Izbicki. So I'm a registered dietitian. I've been specializing in intuitive eating and eating disorder recovery for the past 5 years or so. So I just had a baby in June, so I'm not currently working, but I'll be getting back into it in the next few months. So yeah, I work with clients with a weight inclusive approach, health at every size aligned, and we kind of work on healing their relationship with their bodies, which includes food, movement, and some body image work as well.
Awesome. Both fantastic work that must help so many people. So I know a lot of the participants in my group, they, through their cancer treatments, through chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and also kind of the traumatic surgeries and everything that happens, they often gain weight. So I think there was someone said sometime that it's very common to gain between 10 or 30 pounds during a cancer kind of treatment. So that plays a huge part in their body image, because especially their body's changing in many ways that they don't have control over. So I really want to hear from you how they could help themselves during that time, either during their cancer treatments and then also afterwards. So after they're recovered and now their body's this changed body, how can they kind of come back to themselves and feel better? So I want to hear from either one of you, what is intuitive eating?
Yeah, so I didn't want to cut you off, Gina. So intuitive eating is basically a way of relearning how to trust your body through learning how to identify again your hunger signals, your fullness signals, and listening to your body, figuring out what it is that it needs at a certain time, and being able to trust that and know that, whatever your body is asking for, it is for a reason. From my point of view in the therapy side of things, it also has a lot to do with kind of working around your emotions that have to do with your choices around food. So identifying where some of your insecurities and your body image issues may play a part in what it is that you choose rather than listening to your body. It's also about learning the stereotypes and the stigmas that are around a changing body, whether that's with weight gain or even weight loss. And so intuitive eating is really just getting that grasp of like, how can I learn to be intuitive about what I'm eating rather than listening to some other, diet program or some online blogger that's saying, I know the way to eat health, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I totally second all of that. And it's really like a mind body self-care eating framework. That's kind of how the authors of Intuitive Eating, the book Intuitive Eating came out in 1995, I think, and we can maybe link it if folks are interested in like looking at the book.
And I have a copy right here too.
Oh,
This
yeah.
this is what it looks
She came
like.
prepared.
Yes, they have the book, and then they have a workbook. They have a new edition that came out. But
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so people have been talking about intuitive eating long before the book came out, but it's Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch who really kind of like created this framework, and Erin hit like a bunch of the major points. It's kind of like coming back to a natural way of eating. It is anti-diet, so it's really it's not used for weight loss or to change your appearance in any way. It's really just about kind of coming back to your body and whatever body you're in right now. So kind of thinking about how can I reconnect with my body signals that we all have. Like we're all born with the ability to regulate our body temperature. Our bodies are able to regulate our food intake. It's just a lot of different things get in the way, and maybe we used to be an intuitive eater, but we went on diets, or somebody told us we should only eat this and not eat that. So now we kind of lost our way to tune into those cues. So yeah, it's really just about the mind-body connection and kind of figuring out how can I eat to nourish my body so that I feel good in the body that I have today.
Interesting. I feel like it completely aligns with the yoga meditation practice that we do in my program and I do in my own life. It's almost kind of acceptance and kind of like feeling what your feels are and kind of like going off of that instead of going by this guideline of what you should feel or how you should feel or when you should feel it. So that's interesting, because I feel like if you can practice that in eating, it also translates into your relationships and into your other factors of your life too. I think that's really totally helpful. What would be a way that you both would think that my participants or myself even, or how you would implement this on a daily life?
Yeah, so I think, so there's kind of like, there's 10 principles of intuitive eating. And if we want, I can just like go through them really quickly.
Sure.
So the first is reject, I have it over here so I don't mess it up. Reject the diet mentality. Number 2 is honor your hunger. Number 3 is make peace with food. 4 is challenge the food police. 5 is discover the satisfaction factor. 6 is feel your fullness. 7 is cope with your emotions with kindness. 8 is respect your body. 9 is movement, feel the difference. So that talks about like intuitive movement. So it aligns with like kind of how that works with exercise or movement. And 10 is honor your health with gentle nutrition. So the nutrition, like really nutrition piece of it is like the last principle. And that's for a reason. Like there's all this other stuff that we want people to be able to do before they can honor their health with gentle nutrition. And number 1 is reject the diet mentality for a reason too. Like kind of getting all that noise out, like that we hear all the time about eat this, don't eat that. So I feel like we're saying it like simply, but it's definitely not a simple thing. And it can be very difficult and very complex for people who haven't been in tune with their body for a while, or they maybe are chronic dieters, have disordered eating disorder stuff going on. And I want to say too, this isn't to kind of, if someone is really struggling, I would recommend, finding a therapist and a dietitian that they can work with. This isn't to replace any medical advice, but I guess, one of the biggest one is the first one, the reject the diet mentality. So just what I often work on with people is neutralizing all food and trying to kind of take those labels of like, this is good food, this is bad food off. Because often when we have that, it becomes it hurts both of those categories. So yeah, I mean, removing those labels, just kind of giving yourself permission to eat all different kinds of foods and not call them good or bad, I think is a good step, but it's often really difficult.
Yeah, I think I would 100% second that. I think the biggest step that I work with clients at first is really just labeling. So again, another mindful piece, but it's all about noticing first how many signals you're getting throughout the day from yourself, from friends, from family, from online sources, from social media, that are telling you that your body needs to look a certain way, or worth is equated with, what you're eating throughout the day. There are so many different ways that we get these signals, and most of the time you don't even know it until you sit down and explore it. So, there are, you can see online all sorts of really triggering content, and then people just say it from day to day. I mean, and you'll say it to yourself. So it's really taking pause throughout the day and saying, why am I making this choice? Or if you have like an icky feeling that comes over you when you look at a friend, pausing and saying, okay, what am I feeling, and why am I feeling like this? Is it because I'm doing some kind of body comparison? Is it because I'm looking at my day and thinking about all my food and judging my worth based on that? So I think that's the biggest thing that you can start to do, because until you have that awareness, it's so much harder to try and tackle trusting your body until you really know where all these signals are coming from and how you can separate them and realize, what is it that I believe and what is it that I'm being told all the time in my day-to-day life.
Interesting. It's really interesting. I feel like it sounds like it's really different for everybody. Like it's same kind of framework, but similar kind of like same kind of yoga sequence, but it's totally different for everybody, because their source of how they're relating to the food is different, and maybe from their families or from past experiences really shapes their relationship with food, it seems.
Right. Yeah, so it's not you can kind of follow, exactly like with yoga, you can follow a similar framework, a similar practice, but your individual experiences and your own, negative thinking and the experiences like that you have are gonna, so your approach needs to be tailored to yourself. So it does take a lot of reflection and self-reflection, which is why another reason why I second what Gina said. If you really are struggling, it is extremely helpful to have somebody to kind of sit with you and reflect, a therapist and or a dietitian. Most of my clients have both, so that way they get both of those aspects, because it's digging into yourself, digging into past hurt, digging into current present things going on. So yeah, it is really an individual kind of situation, but following a similar framework. So everybody can get there. It's just a different path that they take to get there.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to hear from you both, that there is help with this too, because I think that's where sometimes the gap is with my patients that I've heard, is they're like, I read these things online but they really need somebody to sit down, like a mental health worker and a dietitian and a nutritionist, just to be like, okay, this is what you can try. This is step one. So
yeah, I think to have it like individualized is so important, because we're not saying, okay, eat this, don't eat that. We're like trying to get away from that. So it's like, what's your relationship with your body? What's your relationship with food? And that is completely different for every single person. And so if we want to be able to, and connecting with our body, and this is more Erin's lane, but it comes up in sessions with clients, like connecting with our body for people can be uncomfortable, traumatic, like, it can trigger like trauma responses. It can be really difficult to be inside your body if you've gone through a lot of different things with trauma, or everyone's experience is so different. I also wanted to say too, I think it sounds very simple, but a huge thing with intuitive eating is, and what I work with people first on, is eating enough. Like, if you're not eating enough, your cues are, you may not be getting regular hunger and fullness cues. it's hormonal. So like if your hormones are off or you're not eating enough to regulate your hormones, your hunger and fullness is not going to be consistent. So a lot of times what I work with people on is, okay, you know, your body isn't giving you these cues. We need to kind of re-regulate your body with enough food throughout the day so that you can like have those signals. And so, I mean, that definitely looks like carbs, fats, proteins, fruits and veggies. People I find tend to hyper focus on fruits and veggies and proteins, and they might be missing what we need the most of, which is carbohydrates and fat. So they're like wondering why they're starving, and they're like having all these intense cravings, and they're, you know, maybe feeling like they're overeating or binging, and they feel like their body's against them. Like, you know, my body wants me to do all these things and I don't know why. And a lot of the time we can trace it back to, okay, you're actually not eating enough during the day. Like, no wonder you're starving at night. Like, you need to eat more, like at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's a lot of that. It sounds simple, but I mean, it's so important you can't even do the work of intuitive eating if your body isn't well nourished and you're not, you know, getting those signals.
Wow. Yeah. So you almost have to really get yourself on a good schedule to actually feel to have those sensations and to have those kind of your body to tell you. So like being kind to your body and treating it nicely by not starving it from something that it wants or needs will actually help you to better regulate how you should feel.
Yeah, that intuition and those hunger and fullness signals don't come back immediately. You don't go, okay, I'm going to start intuitive eating and now I know exactly when to eat and when I'm full. It takes like almost like a reset. Okay. And giving yourself what it needs, and then eventually your body's like, oh, I can trust that my brain is going to make a choice that I get to be fed and I get to be full, and your hormones get balanced back, and then eventually comes those cues.
And I feel like some people, even without eating disorders or disorders of eating, I saw how you used both of those. Can you tell me about that? What is the difference between eating disorders and disorders of eating? I didn't know that there was a difference.
Yeah, so go ahead, Erin.
No, go.
So the way I kind of, and if you can kind of speak to us if this is similar, kind of different how you think about it, but the way I describe it is like, there is just like a wide spectrum of like ways of eating. Disordered eating is kind of like a spectrum. So I would say dieting is on that spectrum. If someone has done a lot of different diets, fad dieting, but even if it isn't fad dieting and it's just like restriction, like I don't eat this food group or I don't eat these foods, like it doesn't have to be a diet plan to be restrictive. So restricting is on that disordered eating spectrum. So here we have like diagnosable eating disorders in the DSM-5: anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, avoidant restrictive food, or avoidant food I'm going to get it wrong, but ARFID.
No, you got it. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Yeah, right the first time.
Yes. So ARFID's on there, and that's like diagnosable. And dieting, you know, that doesn't include dieting, but a lot of people who have been dieting for years and years, or maybe just a few times, show a lot of these same symptoms as like these eating disorders. So dieting is kind of on that spectrum as well. I think if you have significant stress around food in your body, and you feel like stress around your behaviors with food, it doesn't mean you have an eating disorder, but there could be some disordered behaviors or disordered thinking around food. So maybe you are eating enough, or you're eating, you know, different kinds of food, but there could be a lot of guilt and stress. And if there is a lot of guilt and stress, I would guess that is like coming out in behaviors somewhere. So that speaks to you don't have to have a diagnosable eating disorder to like deserve to get some like help with this, because if there's significant stress, it matters. Like if you feel like you're worrying about food in your body, then that's on that spectrum of, you know, something's up. It doesn't have to be disordered eating or an eating disorder, but it's on that spectrum of struggles, I guess, of food and body image.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with everything Gina just said. And I think the other thing to just add is that this, for some people, might be shocking to hear that a lot of the, like, just dieting is disordered eating, or that, not feeling good in your body is disordered thinking. Because a lot of times I will talk to people, and especially clients that come in that just don't even believe it's possible to actually feel comfortable in your body and to accept your body as it is. A lot of times they don't know anybody that does that. Everybody that they know has been dieting in the past, has certain food groups that they, don't eat, has certain food groups that they rely on, have some behavior that is consistent with disordered eating. So it is really shocking sometimes for people to hear, like, oh, it's not normal, especially for women. Oh, it's not normal to hate your body. Like that's not, like, maybe it is our norm, which is really sad to think, but it's not an absolute. There are ways that all over you can find, and this is why Gina and I do this work, because we believe it's possible to be comfortable in your body and to find that sense of acceptance where you feel like you don't need to control the size of your body, and you can feel better in it overall.
Yeah, you both are doing amazing work. Just in this conversation alone, I know that this will resonate with my participants and patients, because this really, just that clarification in itself, I think will shed a ton of light, like Erin just said, about how if you're not feeling comfortable and you're having these self-shame and guilt and uncomfortable feelings, you might not have anorexia or bulimia, but you're still having difficulty with your relationship with food, which in itself is not okay, and you deserve to get help. And I think with all of my patients and all the participants in my group, past and previous, they've gone through so much trauma in their body and in their mind through all of these cancer treatments. A diagnosis alone is enough to stir up your whole mind, and so their whole body has changed. And then so I think food is the last thing they're even thinking about. They're trying to survive. So once they become survivors back into this new body, it's how do they really appreciate that, and how do they, again, like, love themselves for that body. And I agree, Erin, it's really sad that the norm is that we're harmful mentally and physically to our bodies, and we really need to kind of stop this train. So it really, I think all of this talk will really help them. I have one or two more questions, but what is something that they can do to help to build a better relationship with their bodies or their relations? Now that I'm reading my question, I understand that it's not really their relationship with food. It's their relationship with the mental process of that food and of maybe what is causing them to think about that food in that way. So what's one takeaway that they could start to do when they want to stress eat, or when they want to think negatively about the food? What's something that you would suggest or recommend?
Well, I think one really important thing to just kind of think about, like that, thinking about stress eating in general. So typically when we talk about stress eating, it's our emotional way of coping. It's basically a survival skill. I also talk about a lot of times with clients too, how restriction can be in some ways a survival skill, because it gives you a sense of control. It gives you something to focus on when life feels really uncontrollable and unstable. And when, you're eating food, and Gina can talk about this better than I can, but it triggers certain responses in your brain that allow you to feel some sense of comfort. So I would say that if you're finding yourself stress eating, or eating as a response to stress, it is something that's helping you. So it's not that we need to, stop it right at that moment. If that's what you need to get through that moment to have comfort, then that's okay. Like, we talk about comfort eating in a sense of, like, if that's what you have for your comfort, that's what's going to help you survive this hard situation, then lean into that. And also recognize that this may not be what you want as your coping skill, as your stress reduction for the rest of your life. Right now in this moment, it's what you have, and it's okay. And you may feel guilt and shame, but the guilt and shame is coming in, you know, from that internal place and potentially diet culture. Like, that comfort is really important to have that. And then also saying, okay, I would prefer that later on I don't use this as my coping skill. I find other ways to manage my stress. I find other ways to kind of cope with whatever it is that's going on that's a little more, you know, I don't want to use the word productive, but something that's going to help you get through that hard moment just as effectively as that stress eating. I think I lost your question somewhere in there though.
Nope, you just answered it. Yeah.
That was great.
That was.
Yeah, I agree. I second everything that you said, and I'm coming back to this, like, you know, thinking about, okay, why are we stress eating, or why are we having intense cravings or emotional eating? And I think of like a couple things of going back to, are we eating enough? Like, if you're having these like binging episodes, or maybe not binging, but overeating or eating large amounts of food in a short amount of time, it can be physical and it can be emotional. It could be both. It could just be emotional, but a lot of the time I find that like people are experiencing that intense desire to, like those intense craving and that intense desire to eat a larger amount of food than they want to in a short period of time might come from not eating enough during the day. It's like, okay, well, did you have like a full breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Or is this the first time you're like, you know, maybe you had a tiny lunch and that's all you ate today? Like, I would encourage people to look at what they're eating during the day too, and making sure they're eating enough. I see folks in like all different body sizes. And we're typically, with everybody, working on eating enough. I don't think I've ever had a client come to me and tell me what they're eating, and I'm like, oh, they're eating like too much, or they're eating like adequately and experiencing this, you know, stress eating, binge eating, overeating, whatever you want to call it. So oftentimes it's figuring out how can we adequately nourish your body. But it also is like a coping skill, and it can be a helpful coping skill, and it can work. Like Erin said, it can, if you are having a bad day and like some ice cream is going to make you feel better, and it does make you feel better, great. You just like, you know, that's like using a coping skill. If you feel like it's your only coping skill, or you feel like it's not working very well, or you're feeling, you know, it's happening every single night, you're really stressed out about it, yeah, it's like, okay, let's look at some other ways to cope. But it's okay to have that coping skill. But yeah, that's what comes to mind, is like making sure, like, okay, if you're having intense cravings or that's happening a lot, like, are you eating enough during the day? And then the other part is like, that could be happening because you are having this set of food that's off limits. Oftentimes it's like, okay, I feel like I'm eating enough, but I want a cookie and I'm not supposed to have a cookie. But then I had 12 cookies and I'm like really upset about it. So even that mental restriction, you might be eating enough, but if you're mentally saying I'm not supposed to eat cookies sound way better when you're like not supposed to have them versus if you can eat all the cookies in the world.
So true. So true. I feel like both of you, I can hear your passion about this, and the best part is I can hear your like softness around the situation. Both of you have such a kind way of putting this, because diet culture and eating disorders of eating, all of that, a lot of times when talked about is in a negative light, or when I've heard about it or read about it, or when my patients talk about it, it's always in this like shameful kind of like, I need to lose weight because the doctors told me so for my heart, or so that my lymphedema would decrease. I need to lose weight. And I'm always like, yes, losing weight will help, but if that's not it, that doesn't seem to be the answer. And I feel like from talking to you both, I think my way of approaching that, and I think when everybody listens to this too, their way of approaching it really is not so much that you need to restrict and you need to be hard on yourself and you need to like do all these things. It's really quite the opposite. It's really about eating more, being consistent, being nice to yourself, allowing yourself to have that ice cream, allowing yourself to kind of be okay with that craving that got you through that traumatic thing. So I want to thank both of you so much. You answered all my questions and more, but I know that I hope that this won't be the last conversation we have, because I really think that this is so powerful, and this is it's really mental health. It's really how mental and physical health, like you said, the mind and the body, and that's completely what my programs are about and what we strive to do. So this has been really, really helpful, and I can't wait for them to hear it. But are there any last thoughts that either of you want to say, or that you want to share, or if there's any way that, I'm not sure if you take patients. I know I'm from Massachusetts, but I know I don't know if you want to plug yourself at all, but I'll give you a few minutes.
Well, the one thing that I did want to mention too is that they're in this work, like especially with, intuitive eating and eating disorders and disordered eating, there is even a stigma of that. And Gina touched on this a little bit before, but I really want to highlight that, like, most people have an idea of what an eating disorder looks like, what that person looks like. And typically it's very much of like, we see, what you would see on a documentary about anorexia. It's a very malnourished, like usually like ballerina or somebody that's been really struggling, really, like you can see is just emaciated. And that's not the case. There's actually a lot of people in larger bodies and mid-sized bodies. An eating disorder does not have a look. And I think a lot of times people tend to think, or disordered eating doesn't have a look. People tend to think I'm in a larger body, so dieting is for me. Everybody's telling me that my body needs to be smaller. But in actuality, everybody in every size deserves to get help. So struggling with guilt and shame, no matter if your body is smaller or not, is totally a prerequisite to get help. And I think it's really important to stress that, because I think a lot of times people ask, am I actually sick enough to have this be valid? And the answer is, if you're asking yourself that question, if you're saying that I am struggling in any way, you're sick enough. You deserve to get help. And so then that being said, I can plug myself a little. So I'm working, like I said in the beginning, out of Mindful Body Therapy and Wellness, and we do a lot of work with disordered eating and body image issues. Currently, I have a full caseload, but in the new year, I will be opening up some slots again. And I know that there's definitely other therapists at my practice that are frequently taking clients as well. And they do all the same work that I do, and they, basically were my mentors. So definitely check us out. Our website's mindfulbodytherapyandwellness.com.
Mindful Body Wellness.
Sorry, I said that really fast. You can tell I say it like every day.
I'll put it down. I'll put it in the comments too.
mindfulbodytherapyandwellness.com. We also have an Instagram page, so you can search us that way too.
And I'll put all the information about Gina and Erin down below too. And Gina.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a cancer specialist, but I did want to just kind of touch on like that population that you're working with often. And you mentioned like all the treatments and all the stress and trauma, going through the diagnosis and the treatments and all of that, and how my intuitive eating for me, how would that be helpful for this population? And what comes to mind is just like, I mean, I'm like a broken record with eating enough, but like to be able to have your body be strong, to get through these treatments, to have the medication and whatever is going on, to have that work, we need to, be well nourished. And also like some benefits of intuitive eating include like decreased stress around food, decreased guilt around food in your body. I mean, I imagine like if you are a cancer survivor going through treatment, like you have enough stress in your life going on. Like if you're feeling stressed out about food in your body, then being able to kind of decrease that, I think would just be so helpful, because we know stress isn't good for anybody. So this is a big source of stress, and we can alleviate. I mean, it's hard work to get there for most folks, but if we can work to alleviate that, I mean, health is more than just food and movement. It's like it's so much more broad than that. And my goal is for people to just be able to get to a place where they're not like focusing on food and their body so much, that they can actually focus on things that are going to really make them happy and feel like they have a full life. So And also, I'll say too, like being able to give yourself permission to eat all different foods. I know I have family members who went through cancer treatment, and sometimes it's like they couldn't drink water. They like it didn't sound good to them, so they would just drink juice or chocolate milk or whatever was going to hydrate them. And if we have all these like negative associations or like, you know, negative thoughts about the only foods that sound good to you, I imagine that would be really difficult to like nourish your body. So I just feel like intuitive eating could be especially helpful for those people who are just trying to do the best they can. And it sounds like it could be so much easier if we don't have all that noise of good, bad, shouldn't. But yeah, for in terms of plugging myself, I just had a baby, so I'm on maternity leave right now. So I am hopefully going to be returning back to work. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but hopefully in the new year as well, I can let you know down the road. But you could always follow me on Instagram. I'm always posting like all of this kind of stuff on my stories, and so I'll give you that. I think it's Gina _Izbicki, but I will let you know that so you can put it in.
Perfect. All right. Thank you again so much. And I will make sure that everyone is able to contact you both. And again, I just want to thank you so much for joining me. And I know this is going to be really helpful for not only my participants, but those who watch my YouTube channel as well. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.